Greetings, fellow tarot travelers, tripping through the tetrahedral triptych of cards I shall lay before you. I'm Tarot Torch. Yes, that's going to be the topic of today's show, Mexico. Well, you know, Mexico has a real crime problem. The Mexican law enforcement and military have struggled to curb this crime-related violence that keeps ruining their country. In 2018, the number of drug-related homicides in Mexico rose to, are you ready for this? 33,341. That's just in 1 year. And this was a 15% increase from the previous year of a record high. So in 2017, to top things off, a mass grave containing the remains of more than 250 victims of crime-related violence was uncovered in Veracruz state. And at the root of this are the Mexican cartels. And they've killed at least 130 candidates and politicians in the lead up to Mexico's 2018 presidential election. And even though the government is trying to establish a new national guard, this was an idea ushered in after the election of Manuel López Obrador, and it's a hybrid civilian police and military force that's set up to fight the cartels. But good luck with that. Criminal and drug trafficking organizations threaten to undermine the strength and legitimacy of the Mexican government. I mean, in Mexico, cartels pay off judges, police, politicians, and other officials. And civil liberty groups, journalists, and others have criticized the Mexican government's war on the cartels for years, accusing the military and police of widespread human rights violations, including torture, extrajudicial killings, and forced disappearances. So we have two forces at play, making Mexico a very violent and dangerous place. A lot of tourists won't go there. And if they do go there, they only go with a tour group to designated areas. You can't just drive on the country roads in Mexico. According to the USDA, Mexican cartels represent the greatest drug-related threat, supplying heroin, marijuana, methamphetamines, and other drugs to the United States. And while cocaine is largely produced in Bolivia and Colombia and Peru, it's all transported through Mexico. So some of the things that have helped are legalization of marijuana, and that has done a lot to undermine the cartel's power. And, the basic cartel groups are the Sinaloa cartel, the Jalisco New Generation, the Juarez cartel, the Gulf cartel, the Los Zetas, and the Beltran Leyva organization. And the U.S. government, despite waging war on drugs and conducting other counter-narcotics efforts abroad, made little progress in reducing the demand for illegal drugs. So if America wants it, Mexico will provide it. And once in the United States, traffickers deliver the drugs to smaller groups, which are the Mexican gangs. I don't know if any of you have ever visited cities that have Mexican gangs like Los Angeles, but it's a real problem. They're extremely violent people, and they are the sales team for the drug cartels. So it's not just the drug cartels perpetrating violence in Mexico, it's their sales crew in America known as MS-13 and other operative groups. And in the recent years, the United States has sent CIA operatives and security contractors to train Mexican federal police. And they've sent drones and the whole 24 yards, but still it's a problem. And pledging $4 billion by Trump just isn't solving the problem at all. So it's time to ask the cards. And today's cards, I have two decks. The first one is a very interesting character deck called the Santa Muerte Tarot, where the imaging looks like a Grateful Dead concert poster. But in fact, Santa Muerte is a religion practiced by the cartels and gangs. And they've turned it into a tarot deck. And beside it is the holy and sacred oracle deck of Mexico, Loteria cards, Las Cartas de Loteria. And the lottery cards you can buy at any Mexican supermarket for about $2 or $3. I got mine for under $2. And there's a whole bunch of decks that are basically a spin-off from these. I think even Deviant Moon with Patrick Valenza did a spin-off deck, a little miniature oracle deck, and I know there are others. When you start to see the cards, you'll recognize them. They all are emanating from the Loteria. So let's see what the cards have to say. And we'll shuffle the decks asking, what about this crime rate in Mexico and the drug cartels taking over the government and the local gangs in America? I mean, maybe drugs just need to be legalized. Maybe that's the real answer. And then it takes all the impetus out of drug dealing for the cartels. It's, a big question mark. We've made marijuana legal. It seems to be doing okay. Maybe we make, if we make everything legal but heroin, oh my God, everybody's going to be addicted to heroin. So what we could do is legalize it with prescription. And so at least there's a doctor or a nurse present when the drugs are being administered. And I've read articles about how some of these illegal drugs have medical and therapeutic value. Heroin's been used for terminally ill cancer patients and has done wonderful things. In many cases, people are healed from the experience. So maybe we need to broaden our horizons. But let's see what the cards have to say. They'll tell us something we need to know. And the first card is the Seven of Pentacles. And boy, does that look like a scary card. And in the Seven of Pentacles, in the Rider-Waite system, which is what this deck is dedicated to, it's about counting your wealth. In this case, the cartel member is got an abacus of skulls counting the people he's killed. Well, let me tell you, that speaks volumes right there. And the next card is the Knight of Wands. And this is a very humorous card, but it does speak of the police and the military. And if you notice, he's riding off in the opposite direction of the hidden cartel member. Isn't that interesting? And the next one is the Knight of Pentacles. I would say the Knight of Wands is the military, but the Knight of Pentacles is the police, because that's the badge. The Pentacles is the badge. And neither of them are looking at the cartel member. In fact, they're both involved with each other, the military and the police, in who looks best on the horse and who's got the best image around town. The cartel member over here obviously is hidden in the shadows and unseen by both. Now, this may be by accident, or it may be because these flowers represent payola and the greenery here is money, and maybe he's paid them off, because I notice he has a lot of greenery surrounding him as well. Well, let's see what the Loteria card says. I'm only selecting one, and it is El Pescado. Well, this says a lot. In this particular context, the fish traditionally in other decks represents money and wealth. And in this case, I think that does have a subtle undercurrent, no pun intended, to this particular card. But I think it has a lot to do, in this case, with hooking people on drugs and hooking the police and military with money and hooking the government, police, and military and public with fear. That these people aren't trapped, they're hooked. They're hooked and addicted into patterns established by this individual, who, if you look closely, is by far the smartest one in the group. These people have all the equipment of the military. They have the horses, they have the sword, he has a wand, they have their packs. They have all the military equipment a person could ever want. But this individual is hidden in the shadows. He's the smart one. He's like the fox. He's hiding from them all. And they don't see him because they're too wrapped up in their own glamour, looking in opposite directions. And he's right here in plain sight, and yet hidden behind the dead bodies count that he has. And so I think that this is all about addiction to ego, addiction to glamour, addiction to power, addiction to arrest statistics, addiction to drugs, addictions to killing, addictions to all fear in general. And that's what controls the society. And I'd like to know if there's anything in the cards about legalization. Because, you know, addiction occurs when there's no legal method of obtaining drugs. And so people abuse the illegal drugs they have. And the illegal drugs don't have any FDA clearance. And we don't know what's in them. And they can put ingredients in them that make them even more addictive than normal. And so I'd like to turn a card to find out if there's a chance legalization is in the future, because it seems to be the only possible answer. And so for this, I'm going to ask a Loteria card. The world. Yes, it does seem that the world needs to grow up and change and develop an answer together. Drug use is not a real acceptable lifestyle choice, but everybody's different. Some people are missing certain things in their biochemistry. Some people have certain aspects of their childhood or of their adulthood that they can't address. And to be honest with you, alcohol is not the best way to solve this problem. Alcohol-related deaths are enormous compared to marijuana-related deaths. And I don't think there are stats for magic mushroom deaths or peyote deaths or other deaths, but I don't think there are any. I don't think anyone has ever really overdosed on these drugs. They may have reacted childishly and caused themselves or others danger, but compared to alcohol-related deaths, the number is minuscule. And so maybe the whole world needs to wake up and stop being addicted to fear and stop being addicted to right-wing religious concerns that are afraid that we can't handle our own choices in life. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. Do we need to live in a world where all decisions are made for us and where the political leaders and the religionists are off looking in the wrong direction, when the real culprit who's behind the world, destroying the world in general, is getting away with it because they have collusion of money interests involved? At one point or other, the idea of the world is that he's carrying the world. He has a sense of personal responsibility. He has the ability and the need to lift the world up, to lift our consciousness up. You know what happened in Spain? They legalized marijuana, and guess what? Marijuana use plummeted. It's amazing. When it's illegal, everyone has to do it. Once it's legal, nobody cares at all. And it's the one way to undermine the entire moneyed interests of the cartels. So my advice is that we should do that, because the idea of extrajudicial killings, torture, and imprisonment of innocent people, or conducting purges like Duterte is doing in the Philippines, it's dysfunctional. It only adds to the suffering of the world. And it only creates yet another addiction to violence. And we don't need more added to the massive suffering in Mexico. What we really need is to take the power away from the cartels, put the power back in the people, and remove the hook from the mouth of the fish, and get us functioning on a more mature and equitable level of responsible actions in addressing problems and solving them.